Mkhwebane released reports into a number of investigations during a virtual media briefing today. Her office looked into various cases involving public procurement, recruitment, as well as selection of staff, as well as management of ratepayers' funds at municipalities. The briefing was Mkhwebane's first public engagement since the National Assembly voted in favor of setting up an ad hoc committee to probe her fitness to hold office. Well, tonight, Advocate Mkhwebane joins me to talk on these issues and a range of other issues as well that she has discovered in her investigations. Advocate Mkhwebane, good evening and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Thabo Mdluli and your viewers and listeners.
We appreciate you giving us this time just to outline some of what you have found. This particular report coming out with 17 reports, 5 of which are closing reports. Maybe you'll touch on what that actually means, but it spans on housing, health care, cadre deployment, as well as appointments and recruitments at government level, as well as at our SOEs. But maybe to get into it, let's talk about how the work of the Public Protector has been impacted by the COVID-19, which clearly now is going well over a year and maybe closer to 2 years now.
Thabo, our office has been impacted with this virus because we have also lost one of the staff members last month to this pandemic, and we are working mostly from home because all along we had 70% of staff reporting for work, others working from home. But now with level 4, we will be having 50% of staff in the office and 50% working from home. We had to procure the necessary equipments for them to work from home. I must indicate that has been a very difficult process for the staff and for the public, because we have not been accepting members of the public since then, and we encourage members of the public to lodge their complaints through writing to us by email. But as well, we've got a toll-free number to make sure that we are accessible to those who don't have the means to send us emails.
And how does that impact on the intake of complaints, but also on the output of your reports? I mean, for this particular briefing, you outlined 17 reports in the first quarter. Is that in keeping with your previous records?
Yes, we still receive a lot of complaints from the public, and I must indicate that the complaints which we are receiving still are related to service delivery, still are related to bread and butter issues. And then what we have done now is that we have a memorandum of understanding and working relations with various institutions. Remember, in terms of the Vision 2023, where we are encouraging organs of state to also have their internal complaints mechanisms. So we are referring those complaints to them and hold them or monitor that they do indeed assist the public on those. And then we focus on systemic investigations and focus on governance failures. I must indicate that work is ongoing. Staff is working very hard, and I appreciate that in the midst of this pandemic, they are working exceptionally well. And we are producing a lot of outcomes, positive outcomes to the public, and hence we are able to issue these reports, because our quarterly target was 14 reports, but we've managed to issue more than that.
Now, how many of these MOUs do you have in place, and with which institutions? For example, those areas where you have given over matters like, for example, the cadre deployment we could talk about right now, which you have handed over to the National Assembly to say you need to deal with that.
We have an MOU with, for instance, working relations with Government Pensions Fund, because we receive a lot of complaints from there. What we normally do is that all those complaints we now refer them to their complaints unit. They resolve them, and we monitor that they are dealt with. We have that arrangement with the City of Tshwane. We have that arrangement with the Department of Home Affairs. So all the service delivery related complaints, and I must indicate that doing that assist us to resolve a number of complaints speedily. And then we also then have your normal other MOUs which we have, like with the Human Rights Commission, where we also work together. We conduct joint investigations. I mean, like the Alexandra Renewal Project investigation, whose report will be issuing on the 9th of July with the Human Rights Commission. So it's based on our MOU. We have MOU with the Public Service Commission, and there's a number of referrals which we are sending to them, but we will send a lot as well, because we also have a number of complaints of irregular appointments where institutions are not complying to their recruitment and selection policies.
Yeah. You've previously, as noted in your statement, done an intense and thorough look into the systemic issues, particularly around appointments for public servants. And you're saying in this particular round of complaints, you've actually seen more of those also beginning to emerge. What were your findings previously, and did you bring these to the attention of the public service?
Definitely. We've done that several times. We've issued several reports. I mean, always when we have a media briefing, we will have those findings. But I'm glad that the Public Service Commission also issued their comprehensive report dealing with such. And I think the more we refer them, this matters also to them. And we will have to find a way of resolving this, because this is unbelievable, because you find that institutions have policies to deal with this, but unfortunately they don't comply to those policies. And again, the issue is that has also a negative impact on their financials, because you would find that, let's say, Auditor General audit those institutions, and sometimes they would want to see whether there's compliance to the policies, especially on HR matters. They would find that if there's an irregular appointment like that, that will result into irregular expenditure. Hence, you'd find that always there are those high figures of irregular expenditure.
Yeah, we'll come into that, and I want you to tell us a little bit more about the situation in Limpopo and what happened in that irregular appointment. But you also cite 5 particular reports which are closing reports that have unsubstantiated allegations and referral, as we mentioned, to competent other bodies, but also lack of jurisdiction. Now, if you look at the number of 17, and it's 5 of them, which means it's about just below 30% of reports that are closing reports. Is that a pattern that we can pick up maybe in the bulk of your work, that you find about 30% of the work that you get is work that actually would have been given to other jurisdictions? And what does that say about people's understanding of the work of the public protector?
I must say that people do understand the mandate of the public protector. Those which we are closing, you'd find that the complaint is lodged, and on our investigation, or as well as an own initiative investigation, because there is a number of those own initiative investigations which we've done, especially on the issues of procurement of personal protective equipment during the COVID process. So we'd find that indeed processes and procedures have been followed in the procurement, or as well there's a complaint that there's an irregular appointment, but when we check, you'd find that the person complies to the requirement of the post. Therefore, we won't have a finding as far as that is concerned. We've got a very few which falls outside our jurisdiction. Then that shows that people do understand the mandate of the public protector, but those who approach us we indeed advise them accordingly where they can go, or as well, there are those which we refer to the relevant institution which can handle the matter. So in case we are closing a report, we would have put all the resources, the time to investigate the matter, and then at the end of the day, we find that there is no substantiated evidence in the matter, because all our investigations, Thabo, are based on the evidence before us.
Right.
We check what the complaint is, we check the response from the department or that institution, we do our own independent investigation and find our own truth, especially if it relates to a corruption. We will have to request bank statements, we'll have to check telephone records and all those, and then come to the conclusion that indeed there is that the matter is substantiated or the matter is not substantiated.
Now, 3 out of the 5 were about PPEs, and that was found to be unsubstantiated. Let's talk about, for example, the Lejweliputswa municipality, and what actually happened there, what gave rise to that complaint?
It was a complaint lodged by one councillor, Malukwane, last year, October. He alleged that the municipality did not follow correct procurement processes or procedures in the procurement of the PPEs as part of the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. So our investigation revealed that the municipality, in fact, followed the proper process, hence, and the evidence which we had didn't substantiate that particular claim. Hence, we are closing that particular matter.
So why would the councillor then bring such a complaint? I mean, if indeed the processes are followed, is the councillor kept in the dark? Was he unaware that proper processes were followed?
Yes, you'll find that is the councillor possibly from the opposition party, and they would suspect that there is corruption which is taking place. And even if it's not from the opposition party, but I think it's proper that we also receive government officials or even the same councillors for us to assist them. Hence, we've been saying, Thabo, that sometimes you'd find that departments are spending money to appoint forensic companies to do investigations, but some of those resources can be utilized properly, where they can request the public protector to investigate, and where we need expertise, then we can agree on how they pay possibly that actuary or that forensic investigator, so that at the end of the day we can come up with a well investigated matter.
Right, we continue in a moment with the Public Protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane. We look into those reports where she found some adverse findings of inappropriate actions that were taken by the officials, and what she recommended when we continue next. To be a part of the conversation tonight, you can tweet us at Newsroom405 or otherwise send us your WhatsApp messages on 072-110-5584. In Focus continues in a moment. Right, back with you now here on In Focus. Thanks for staying on. We're in conversation tonight with the Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane. She released her first report for this financial year and citing 17 their reports, 5 of which were closing reports, but 12 of which is the remainder, having some adverse findings, and she has recommended some appropriate action to be taken. Let's get to those which probably are the biggest highlights, maybe in as far as the public is concerned, because they involve some high-profile individuals like ministers and MECs, and then we'll get to, of course, the other more important bread and butter issues as well. The report on the Transport Minister and the appointments of the advisors. What did Mr. Mbalula and Mr. Muemi do there that was incorrect?
You know, we received a complaint from an anonymous complaint from the staff of the Department of Transport. It was, in fact, relating to the procurement of the PPEs, but then secondly, the irregular or the alleged irregular appointment of ministerial advisors by the Department of Transport. So the investigation was conducted through writing to the minister, to the DG, and also conducting then our own investigation, requesting the necessary documents relating to the appointment of these officials. And also we wrote to the Minister of Public Service and Administration to request their records as far as this matter is concerned. So we then analyzed the evidence, because normally our investigation is that our investigators will write to the department to request documents, and we also conduct our own investigation. And then after that, we come up with a Section 79 notice, which we call that to give the other party an opportunity to give us their side of the story. It's like an Audi process, Audi Bartem process. So that they responded, gave us the information. So in their response, they also acknowledged that indeed that process was not followed, and one of the advisors was prepared to pay back the money, and the others as well, the department said they will follow that up so that they can recoup that money.
So there are 2 aspects to this. Firstly is whether or not Mrs. Venkile Khoza and Mpondo were actually appointed as per the processes of the Public Service Act. But also the second bit is whether or not they were overpaid as far as their salaries are concerned. Let's talk about their process of appointment. What were the processes that were flouted there?
The processes which were flouted was that the level of these officials was that they were at the level of the Deputy Director General, and if you appoint a special advisor at that particular level, the department was supposed to approach the Department of Public Service and Administration to get the concurrent approval as far as that appointment is concerned. So that was done after the fact, actually after the appointments were made and the payments were made, because according to the evidence is that the offers in respect of the contracts for the appointments were dated June 2019 and March 2019, but the service, the Minister of Public Service and Administration approved them only in August, which is another one 2 months down the line, another one from March to August, which is around 3-4 months, and the other one around November respectively. So hence we said Mr. Venkile undertook to pay back that money, the difference in salaries or over the overpayment, and then the other ones, then the minister and Mr. Muemi undertook to recover all the overpayments. So Thabo, in a nutshell, we check the compliance to the prescripts. That's all what we do, what the policy is saying, what the relevant legislations are saying, and we are saying this process was not followed. Hence, in this instance, even the minister and the DG acknowledged that, and they undertook to recover all the overpayments.
Do you interrogate the motive of why processes were flouted? Was there interference on the part of the minister in actually that process being done the way that it was done?
You know, we interrogate all those when we are investigating, and as well, hence we also write to the minister, and we also ask his involvement on the matter. And even that Section 79 notice, we also send it to the minister for the minister to give us their side of the story on why this process was followed. So in this instance, that was done. But as well, remember, the Director General is the accounting officer who is responsible for making sure that in terms of the Performance Management Act, in fact, the Public Finance Management Act, all the processes are followed, and even also making sure that they guide and advise the minister on the processes to follow for the appointments of these officials.
Yeah. Protector, I think for the public whom you protect, we would want to know what is behind this error. Was it just an error in judgment on the part of the DG, or was this deliberate? And if the anonymous members did not raise this issue, were they actually going to rectify it? Were they going to pay back the salaries which were overpaid? And therefore, that makes it even more of an issue that these were flouted deliberately, and maybe something more needs to be done.
Definitely, Thabo. Hence, we need to always have members of the public and even staff to be vigilant on such issues, because ministers, accounting officers needs to be held accountable, because we are dealing with state resources. And indeed, if there was no complaint which was lodged, and you find that the Auditor General as well, when they are auditing, you'd find that sometimes they don't even pick up this issue, because remember, they don't audit the whole process, but they just have that process of just checking sampling. And if they are sampling and they don't see anything, then it means this was going to continue for years and years whilst these people are occupying the positions.
Now here on In Focus, thanks for staying on. We're in conversation tonight with the Public Protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane. She released her first report for this financial year, and citing 17 their reports, 5 of which were closing reports, but 12 of which is the remainder, having some adverse findings, and she has recommended some appropriate action to be taken. Let's get to those which probably are the biggest highlights, maybe in as far as the public is concerned, because they involve some high-profile individuals like ministers and MECs, and then we'll get to, of course, the other more important bread and butter issues as well. The report on the Transport Minister and the appointments of the advisors. What did Mr. Mbalula and Mr. Muemi do there that was incorrect?
You know, we received a complaint from an anonymous complaint from the staff of the Department of Transport. It was, in fact, relating to the procurement of the PPEs, but then secondly, the irregular or the alleged irregular appointment of ministerial advisors by the Department of Transport. So the investigation was conducted through writing to the minister, to the DG, and also conducting then our own investigation, requesting the necessary documents relating to the appointment of these officials. And also we wrote to the Minister of Public Service and Administration to request their records as far as this matter is concerned. So we then analyzed the evidence, because normally our investigation is that our investigators will write to the department to request documents, and we also conduct our own investigation. And then after that, we come up with a Section 79 notice, which we call that to give the other party an opportunity to give us their side of the story. It's like an Audi process, Audi Bartem process. So that they responded, gave us the information. So in their response, they also acknowledged that indeed that process was not followed, and one of the advisors was prepared to pay back the money, and the others as well, the department said they will follow that up so that they can recoup that money.
So there are two aspects to this. Firstly is whether or not Mrs. Venkile Khoza and Mpondo were actually appointed as per the processes of the Public Service Act. But also the second bit is whether or not they were overpaid as far as their salaries are concerned. Let's talk about their process of appointment. What were the processes that were flouted there?
The processes which were flouted was that the level of these officials was that they were at the level of the Deputy Director General, and if you appoint a special advisor at that particular level, the department was supposed to approach the Department of Public Service and Administration to get the concurrent approval as far as that appointment is concerned. So that was done after the fact, actually after the appointments were made and the payments were made, because according to the evidence is that the offers in respect of the contracts for the appointments were dated June 2019 and March 2019, but the service, the Minister of Public Service and Administration approved them only in August, which is another one 2 months down the line, another one from March to August, which is around 3-4 months, and the other one around November respectively. So hence we said Mr. Venkile undertook to pay back that money, the difference in salaries or over the overpayment, and then the other ones, then the minister and Mr. Muyemi undertook to recover all the overpayments. So Thabo, in a nutshell, we check the compliance to the prescripts. That's all what we do, what the policy is saying, what the relevant legislations are saying, and we are saying this process was not followed. Hence, in this instance, even the minister and the DG acknowledged that, and they undertook to recover all the overpayments.
Do you interrogate the motive of why processes were flouted? Was there interference on the part of the minister in actually that process being done the way that it was done?
You know, we interrogate all those when we are investigating, and as well, hence we also write to the minister, and we also ask his involvement on the matter. And even that Section 79 notice, we also send it to the minister for the minister to give us their side of the story on why this process was followed. So in this instance, that was done. But as well, remember, the Director General is the accounting officer who is responsible for making sure that in terms of the Performance Management Act, in fact, the Public Finance Management Act, all the processes are followed, and even also making sure that they guide and advise the minister on the processes to follow for the appointments of these officials.
Yeah. Protect, I think for the public whom you protect, we would want to know what is behind this error. Was it just an error in judgment on the part of the DG, or was this deliberate? And if the anonymous members did not raise this issue, were they actually going to rectify it? Were they going to pay back the salaries which were overpaid? And therefore, that makes it even more of an issue that these were flouted deliberately, and maybe something more needs to be done.
Definitely, Thabo. Hence, we need to always have members of the public and even staff to be vigilant on such issues, because ministers, accounting officers needs to be held accountable, because we are dealing with state resources. And indeed, if there was no complaint which was lodged, and you find that the Auditor General as well, when they are auditing, you'd find that sometimes they don't even pick up this issue, because remember, they don't audit the whole process, but they just have that process of just checking sampling. And if they are sampling and they don't see anything, then it means this was going to continue for years and years whilst these people are occupying the positions. Cases then of not having to be accountable or working towards good governance. And that's the purpose of our office as the Public Protector, to assist that there's good governance, to make sure that there's compliance to the very same prescripts and policies which governments are having. And always with these reports, we are issuing them so that we uproot the incidences of this maladministration, corruption. And if accounting officers, ministers, CEOs, when you start or when you are deployed or when you are working or when you are appointed, it's good to check what reports were issued by the Public Protector, what are the audit findings, and make sure that you refrain from repeating the same challenges which have been done by, or the same mistakes which have been done by the previous or your predecessors.
Yeah. Should we take then that the undertaking that has been made that the overpayment is going to be paid back as a sense that this report is received and it won't be challenged?
I take it that it will be implemented, and they were cooperating, the department, and actually that's what we do always. And when we issue the Section 79 notice, that's what, on all our reports, that's what we do. And we hope that they won't challenge it. But as well, Thabo, if they challenge it, it's within their rights to do that. And remember, then the court might review that, even though we do have proof that they responded to our Section 79 notice. They wrote letters, and we have all the evidence which we can avail in case we are taken on review.
Let's talk then about the appointment of Ms. Mpondo in the very same department, and whether or not that appointment was done in a proper way, and the prescripts and the policies were followed there, because the whistleblowers raised the question of qualifications.
Definitely, the evidence which we have showed that the process which was followed to appoint Ms. Mpondo was revealed that the appointment of Ms. Mpondo was done within the relevant prescripts, and we have captured all the evidence in our report. In front of me, I only have the summary, executive summary of the matter, but then we found that the applicable prescripts were complied with, and there were no irregularities in the appointment of Ms. Mpondo to the position of Director, Parliamentary and Cabinet Support in the office of the Minister.
All right, when we continue next with Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, we'll find out what happened in the secondment of Mr. Mpondo to PRASA and what was the minister's involvement there. Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane stays with us, and Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, the Public Protector, releasing her reports into the first quarter of this financial year, with 12 of them having some adverse findings, particularly when it comes to appointments at the government level, as well as at our SOEs and at board levels. Let's talk to now the issue, Public Protector, of the secondment of Mr. Mpondo to PRASA. What did the minister do there that was not supposed to be done?
The secondment of Mr. Mpondo to PRASA was also done contrary to the provisions of the Public Service Act and other prescripts applicable to the department. And the evidence which we have in our possession is that the way they've seconded him, it was not supposed to be done the way it was done, and that's where we are also saying this process should be corrected, and especially by the department, because the process which was followed and the issues relating to this appointment was not done properly. So that's what we had the findings on, and we do have the evidence or the responses which we received from the minister, from the DG, relating to this matter. So and we requested they need to correct this irregular secondment. Actually, that was, I think, even during our investigation, it was finally, I think he was finally recalled or is no longer at PRASA.
Yeah, but then the question becomes, what are the oversight mechanisms in place that supposed to pick this up as and when it happens, before, of course, we give a report after the fact?
That's where you'd find that even though in fact, the process normally in government is that the accounting officer, which is the Director General, is the one who will facilitate and process all the necessary documentation relating to, let's say, then the minister will say, I would want so and so to be transferred to this particular place. But then what needs to happen is that the accounting officers or officials know that they should be implementing a lawful instruction, and they should make sure that even if that's the case, they should ensure that all the relevant legislations are complied with and processes. But also, in case this situation happens and they are compelled to do that by the ministers or the executive authority, that they shouldn't be involving or subjecting themselves to that unlawful instruction. But as well, the ministers, the accounting authority, who are responsible to do oversight within their various institutions, even if they would indicate that we would want to second somebody to this particular institution, but they also need to know that there are policies, and indeed that should be done within the necessary policies of the institution.
Now, let's look at the procurement and contract management question then. There is a contract that was brought by Advocate Anton Alberts of the opposition around the procurement processes of a 30 million rand tender in the Gauteng e-government department there. What did you find? Were processes flouted there? And was the MEC, Panyaza Lesuf, who is cited in the complaint, actually involved?
And that complaint as well was fast-tracked because it was relating to or took place within the COVID-19 pandemic rush. In fact, there were allegations that the contract was rushed through without following proper tender processes. And on receipt of the complaint and clarifying all the issues, on analyzing the complaint, we then say the investigation team investigated whether eGov advertised and awarded the SOE tender amounting to 30 million. and whether Mr. Lusufi influenced the award of the contract, whether SETA has insufficient capacity to deal with this matter or to procure SOC services on behalf of eGov. So the investigation revealed that eGov advertised and awarded the tender into IT without following proper procurement processes. And this constituted improper conduct and maladministration. And in addition, we found that indeed SETA has insufficient capacity and capability to procure the SOC services on behalf of eGov. And evidence in our possession revealed that SETA failed to procure SOC services on behalf of eGov without justifiable grounds, since eGov's first request was in 2017 already. So the former CEO of SETA conceded that SETA does not have the capacity, and the executive caretaker of SETA, Mr. Geise, did not delegate his obligation and duties to procure such services to eGov, as eGov is not a subsidiary of SETA. So we have then, regarding Mr. Lusufi, the allegation that he influenced the award of the 30 million tender to N2 IT was found to be unsubstantiated. There is no evidence indicating that Mr. Lusufi was involved in any procurement processes. As you know that most of the time MECs are not involved in that process, but then as well, or that he disregarded the provisions of the Code of Conduct of the members of the Provincial Executive Committee of Executive Council, because remember, we would also have to check whether he exposed himself to a conflict, whether there was any communication that he undertook to inform the officials to behave in a certain manner. That information or that evidence we didn't have. So to remedy this issue, we then said the provincial MEC of Finance and e-Government must ensure that Mr. Baloyi, the departmental head, conducts training in respect of all executive officials on the eGov, and officials involved in the supply chain processes.
Yeah.
And then as well, there must be disciplinary processes which must be instituted against one official motivi for advising into IT of the tender award before a letter of appointment was issued and before the contract was signed by eGov. So a lot of information which we've picked up here is the finding against the officials. And it is noted as well that Mr. Sidat, the former acting head of eGov, has since returned back to his position at the Gauteng Premier's office, and that disciplinary steps have already been taken against him by the Premier, and then that he was also issued with a sanction of a final written warning in November 2020. Therefore, the remedial action will not be taken in this instance because we have all the evidence that that process was done. Because remember, we must also make sure that there is disciplinary process, and that was done, and there was a consequence management in this particular instance.
Every time this occurs, people will say, well, it's always the officials who are held accountable, and the executive always gets away scot-free. And you're saying you couldn't find any evidence linking the MEC to this. It's just the fact that there is no evidence linking him and that he is completely clear, or that you just couldn't find it. And maybe the executive are now becoming a little bit cleverer around doing these things and not leaving a trail behind.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, remember again, Thabo, what is reported, we don't rely on information which is out there in the media and everywhere. There might be information out there, but then remember, with us, we will have to go and investigate the matter and have evidence. All our findings are based on evidence. I mean, we have requested and checked the bank accounts and everything. We couldn't find any suspicious transaction or which will then make us to suspect this, or any information, evidence which links Mr. Msufi to this particular company, in the sense that, yes, they might know each other, but then as far as this matter is concerned, where possibly there's a communication which then informs the officials to behave in a certain manner or to approve. We've done such, remember the test which we apply against members of the executive is very high. Remember Section 96 of the Constitution and the Executive Members Ethics Act will say the members of the executive must not expose themselves to a conflict. It doesn't even need us to prove a conflict. So in such instances, we didn't find any written communication. I'll give an example, like the report we issued against the former Premier of the Western Cape, Helen Zille. There we had evidence, emails where she wrote to inform the MEC that there is this company or there is this individual who can provide this, and being her son. So that is exposing herself to that particular conflict. We are not saying we investigated that, and because she exposed herself to that conflict, instead of investigating the conflict itself.
Right. Let's talk then about cadre deployment and why you chose not to get into that investigation and refer that to the Speaker of Parliament, where issue was raised with you by the opposition to say, look into this matter of cadre deployment and whether or not the ANC has attempted to influence or even instruct deployees, for example, to influence the appointment of DGs, the appointment of chairpersons of boards, the appointments of CEOs, etc., etc.
In this particular instance, because in this matter, again, we assess the proper institution which will deal with the matter. The Public Protector Act is Section 6(4)(c) Roman figure 2. It's very clear, because sometimes during the investigation, when we find that the proper institution to investigate this matter is this one of the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests. Therefore, for them to mention generally the cadre deployment, it means we will have to have how many members of, or how many DGs who have been appointed, how many CEOs, how many chairpersons of and board members in state-owned entities. Therefore, the capacity for us to do that, and it's open-ended. And I think this is properly, can be properly dealt with at the in Parliament, especially because when you appoint a DG or a CEO or chairperson or board members of the state-owned entities, that should be approved by Cabinet. And remember, the Speaker's responsibility in terms of the Constitution is an oversight, is to have an oversight over the executive. Therefore, and the Speaker is there on behalf of the public. If the DA is representing the public and they feel that there are these cadre deployment which are questionable, they should be making sure that they request the Speaker to investigate, or as well to refer such to the various portfolio committees to consider the matter and to make sure as well that what are the prescripts which are there, and whether the people they are appointing, because what is very important is whoever is being appointed, is that person qualified to be appointed, they meet the requirements of that particular position. So this matter, we thought it best that it should be investigated at that particular level.
What's plaguing the provision of RDP housing when we continue next with the Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane findings on a matter that was raised in the Nelson Mandela Bay. Take your
documentation. So yes, it's a challenge which is there, and it leads to that issue of unprofessionalism, violation of Section 195 of the Constitution, where you'd find that the accounting officers, they should make sure that when they deal with such issues, members of the public are informed. They are also told about the outcomes of whatever investigation they are doing.
Right, let's go to some WhatsApp messages then coming through tonight. Public Protector, earlier on you asked the question on your alignment, particularly as far as the ruling coming from the Concord yesterday on the former President Jacob Zuma. You aligned more with the minority judgment. And there's a question from Donald. Donald says, was it appropriate for you, Public Protector, to comment on Jacob Zuma's pending jail sentence with emphasis on a minority report?
The question was asked by ENCA, I think, and, I was dealing with all these reports, Thabo. Now you called me, I'm dealing with the reports. And now there's this question where I'm asked about that. And remember, that is a question which should be asked because the Commission's existence is because of the report of the Public Protector. But then I was indicating, because I was asked what is my comment, and on perusing the judgment, I then said, there's nothing wrong for me to read the judgment and peruse and pick up that the minority judgment, is dealing with issues the way I would have thought it would be dealt with. So I think, as the constitutional head or head of the constitutional institution, such issues, because we are there as an institution to make sure as well that the rule of law and there is issues of fairness and justice, because indeed everyone is entitled to exercise their rights within the Constitution, including myself. It's issues which we cannot just keep quiet on.
Another punitive sentence coming out of the Concord, particularly in this particular matter of a civil contempt of a court order. There's a question that's coming through tonight saying, are you now afraid yourself of actually coming out with adverse finding because of the kind of punitive judgments that you've had to deal with? Sir, saying, I think the Public Protector is now afraid of issuing adverse findings against ANC members who are still supposed to decide her fate. How do you explain the appointment of people by Thabi Mdluli and allow them to start working? The Minister of DPSA approves their appointment before, I suppose, the Minister of DPSA approves their appointment.
But our findings are that that money must be paid back, and it's good that they themselves agreed that the money must be paid back. So the findings are there, and our remedial action is saying it should be paid back. The Public Protector should be doing her work without fear or favor, and that's what we are doing. Yes, it's very difficult because when one is facing personal cost orders and several of those, and which will lead to a very difficult situation for the person of the Public Protector. And the unfortunate part is that the challenges in South Africa, or as well what the media would portray, it's as if I am a one-woman show and I am doing all this work. But then this work is done by a very professional, very skilled officials of the Public Protector. And when it's brought to my attention, and when I check that indeed the evidence which is there and the various prescripts have been violated, and how can we correct this? Indeed, we rely on the very same courts, because most of the time our remedial action, we rely on the findings of the Concord in the Nkandla judgment. Especially, it's detailed on how the remedial action what should the remedial action do? And that's purely what we're doing.
Public Protector, quick one, 30 seconds. Are you investigating digital vibes?
I haven't seen the complaint. No, I'm not aware. And again, Thabo, that shows that complaints are lodged with the office. They don't come to me directly. They come through the registration and files are opened. I'm not aware about
Public Protector, my question is a little bit more. I didn't say have you received a complaint. I'm asking you, are you investigating digital vibes?
On own initiative,
yes.
No, I haven't, Thabo. I have not done that because I've also seen that the SIU is investigating the matter. I haven't.
Advocate,
but what I'm doing is investigating, or as well on own initiative is the issue of the SAA.
I appreciate your time there, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, the Public Protector. That's how we wrap up this conversation. And thank you very much for your engagement tonight and your questions. When we continue next, the unrest on the African continent, particularly looking at Swaziland and what it means. We'll speak to an analyst on that question in a moment. Stay with us. So it comes here and I'm sitting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, sharp. Come, sit there. Made in China. Professor, good evening.
How are you? How are you?
Professor Mdluli. We're going to come in and take some headlines, so please be patient. We're not going to take long.
No problem.
All right.
I'm in.
All right. Thank you.
I'm with you.
All right. Welcome back. You're with us tonight here on In Focus, Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. The continuing unrest in Swaziland has brought into focus the question of the impact of governance or lack thereof on the African continent. We speak to analysts of the Pan-African situation tonight. Professor Mamo Muchi is a Pan-African analyst and research professor, and he'll give us a sense of what this means and what the impact will be. But first, though, let's have a look at what's leading in the news this hour. South Africa's daily coronavirus cases reached new multi-month highs with over 19,000 infections recorded in the recent 10. The South African Weather Service issuing a warning of more heavy rain in an already flooded part of the Western Cape province. Unconfirmed reports of martial law emerging from Eswatini as bloody pro-democracy protests aimed at removing Africa's last absolute monarch continue. And U.S. comedian Bill Cosby has been released from prison after Pennsylvania's Supreme Court overturned his sexual assault conviction. Welcome back to In Focus. Let's begin with a look at your numbers. Tonight, South Africa has registered a staggering 19,506 new COVID-19 cases for the first time this year. This comes amid a surge of the Delta variant, first identified in India, that is currently gripping the country. Gauteng continues to record the highest number of COVID-19 cases, with 11,160 recorded in the same cycle. Now, Western Cape has recorded 2,059 new cases, with KwaZulu-Natal and the Northwest recording just over 1,000 new cases. Confirmation is that 698 people have been admitted to hospital in the past 24 hours. A further 383 COVID-19 related deaths have been reported, bringing the total fatalities now to 60,647 to date. Currently, South Africa has 1,973,972 cases since the pandemic began in the first quarter of 2020. Meanwhile, further afield, U.S. comedian Bill Cosby is a free man. He's been released from prison a short while ago after Pennsylvania's Supreme Court overturned his sexual assault conviction. The 83-year-old had served more than 10 years of his 2 years, I beg your pardon, of his 10-year sentence at a state prison near Philadelphia. He had been found guilty of drugging and molesting former basketball player Andrea Constant and in 2004, but the Supreme Court found that he was prejudiced in the trial, with his due process rights violated. The court has also barred a retrial. Now, Cosby is best known for starring in the 1980s TV series The Cosbys. Now, scores of people are reported to have been killed as the crackdown on pro-democracy protesters continues in neighboring Eswatini. Protesters there are calling for a multi-party democracy and the removal of King Mswati III in Africa's last absolute monarch. They have also accused Mswati of abusing his power and state resources to fund his lavish lifestyle, with most in the kingdom living in abject poverty. The question many are asking is why some African leaders refuse to relinquish their power despite discontent among the population they lead. Pan-African analyst and research professor Mamo Muchi joins me now to discuss this issue. Prof, good evening and thank you very much for your time. The question of unrest in Eswatini bringing into focus now a lot of questions around governance on the African continent, but also generally the abuse of power. But let's talk firstly about multi-party democracy and how we are approaching that in the continent, and why there are some pockets in our continent where we find that this is not something that is well respected.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a very important issue. Governance, leadership, institution building, and system building in Africa is extremely important. We borrowed everything. Not that we borrowed it, it was imposed on us from outside. So we have not contextualized it, Africanized it. So we have not found a way to do it. I'll just give you one concrete example about China. They say everything they took from outside, the Chinese say, we must give it Chinese characteristics. That's what they say. Whether they're right, it is right or wrong, whether they make mistake or not, it's their mistake. In Africa, it's extremely difficult to say that it's Africans that are making mistakes. If you borrow the ideas from outside and you misuse and abuse them, then you create challenges, serious challenges in Africa. So I'm just simply saying to you that we in Africa, we have For example, there are 48 countries that are least developed. 34 of the 48 countries are in Africa. What it means is almost the entire system that we have, the governance system, is not genuinely free from corruption, from criminal activities. Let me just give you one concrete example. 75 million Africans have to pay bribe to get essential services. That is one of the studies I just did. Since you asked me, I started doing some research, and I just could not believe that a lot of our people, to just get ordinary service, they had to bribe people. What does it mean? This is very, very complicated. There is also what they call the Anti-Corruption Transparency International Index. They want to prevent corruption index. But you know what? Out of the 100 that you need to get that mark, only in Africa is about 20%, which is very, very, very low, which means that the corruption is from almost everywhere. So what it means is that the governance system, the leadership arrangements, all of them are really complicated, and they need to be completely rethought, redesigned, re-engineered, recontextualized in the African setting, to make sure that what matters is not for people to take advantage by using politics to become rich. If you get a political office, you become rich. You get money. You get all kinds of services, all right, advantages. For that reason, people go not because they want to serve people. They go because they want to make money. This is wrong. The best idea for any leader must be to serve the people of Africa. That's the main thing.
As you're talking of serving the people of Africa, what do you make of the anti-monarchy sentiment that comes with, for example, this protest in Swaziland? You started off by saying, when we borrow, we need to borrow, and while we borrow, and see how we can make it our own. So government of Swaziland would say they are doing it in their own way, this idea of democracy, doing it via the monarchy, but the people on the ground refusing the monarchy at this particular point, wanting a state where they vote for who's going to be president, who's going to be prime minister, who's going to be a minister. What do you make of that anti-monarchy sentiment that comes quite strongly in this particular protest?
I'll just give you a concrete example. Ethiopia used to have a monarchy. Then we went into a different system. We still are in crisis. Even in Swaziland, I think it might be much better to make the monarchy to be responsive to serving the people in Swaziland. It's much better to change the monarchy than to try to create copy systems, like get so many political parties who have their own specific agenda, who may not be trying to serve the people of Swaziland. It may be like that. I don't know. I mean, unless there is a debate, a kind of all the political parties, all those who want to join, including the monarchy, they discuss, they debate, they find out, they agree on a pathway, or a leadership pathway, and knowledge how to do it, and demonstrate it. If they could do it like that, then I think it's fine. They can do it together. But fighting each other now is not going to help, trust me, Swaziland. And a new thing may not be able to come. From the experience we have in Africa of all the political parties, all these elections happen. What happens? Elections happen, but dictators there for over 30 years, some of them. Look at in Uganda, in Cameroon, in many other places. We have all these challenges. There are elections, but who do you elect? Not the people who serve you, but the people who take advantage of you. So I am just simply saying to you, an excellent idea would be I wish the African Union in general, at the African Union level, there should be a very good debate exactly how should leadership, governance, institutions, systems in Africa should be developed that are completely decolonized, that also are not motivated by self-interest, that to take advantage by both internal and external interests, all right, by aid, loan, and all these things that people do to take advantage from Africa when Africa is the richest continent in this planet in terms of resources. We should be saying very clearly that we need leaders who who wanted to be elected, who want to lead because they want, above all else, to serve the people. People like Thomas Sankara.
Yeah.
All right?
Professor Mdluli, let me take a break. And when we come back...
What did he do?
Professor Mdluli, I was saying let's take a break. When we come back, I want you to expand a little bit on that, the type of leaders, as you mentioned, Thomas Sankara, the type of leader and the type of mental change that needs to happen on the side of African leaders, particularly when it comes to doing what they are supposed to do for their people. We'll continue in a moment. Pan-African analyst and research professor Thabo Mdluli with us tonight, and the conversation around governance in Africa. This on the background, of course, of the governance issues coming up from Eswatini. In Focus continues in a moment. Welcome back. You're live with us on In Focus. We continue our discussion tonight. Professor Thabo Mdluli, Pan-African analyst and research professor, with us tonight on the governance issues on the African continent. In your opinion, Prof, before the break, I mean, one of the facets of this issue of governance that comes up and that the people of Eswatini are raising is the issue of abuse of power and abuse of resources, right? What type of leader, what needs to change in our leadership in order for people to do what they are supposed to do for their nations, or leaders in particular?
Thank you so much for asking a very good question and a very relevant question. Africa suffers from leadership poverty and leadership curse. Trust me. We had some very good leaders, and what happens to these leaders when they lead well and help their people? External actors combine with internal agents and manipulate them and get them killed. That's what has happened to us. I'll just give one concrete example. Thomas Sankara, one of our students at the UNISA, did a PhD, and I was examiner. You will not believe when I read it, I was almost in tears. The reason is, within 4 years, Thomas Sankara made an extraordinary difference. What did he do for the ordinary people? He said he does not want to ride Mercedes-Benz. He walks and bicycle. He said his salary, reduced it by half. He's not interested in money. It's not the love of money. It's the love of the people, the love of Africa. He changed the name to Burkina Faso, Africanized it. Many things like that. We have also excellent leaders. in Africa. So what I'm just simply saying to you is that we need people who want to be leaders must be, above all else, they must value, their salary must be to serve the service they give to the people, the health of the people, the well-being of the people, the reduction of unemployment, the eradication of unemployment. No one should be a beggar. In a country like South Africa, which is one of the richest countries in Africa, your platinum, what don't you have? 16 minerals you have, trillions. Why should we see some people in South Africa begging? I go on the street, they call me Papa and everything. We just have to, it's so difficult for me to just go by without just giving them something. It shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't be in this situation. Even in a country like South Africa, which is extraordinary, rich, in many, many senses. It's just management is where the biggest problem. Resource management, we don't. The people who lead must not be doing it for money.
Yeah.
They must be more happy when they see all the young people, the children, everybody just becoming very active, radiant, doing extraordinary things, invention, innovation. We should be creating blockchain innovation hubs. We should be doing many, many interesting simulation hubs, incubation hubs, many things like that. Only the young people should be like that. Stimulating them, doing them, and you are the leader, then we will give you a lot of award. Not money, but values to say, oh, you did a great thing.
Right.
Something like that is what we should be thinking.
Right.
I think we need a total paradigm shift, a mindset shift to make our youth game changers and change makers, and to also use the current digital technology. The technology is going to help us a lot, trust me now. Because with the technology, we can even do digital agriculture now. Many things we could do. And I think a lot of us now in the universities where we are, we should be very actively engaged to make sure our youth change and their mindset is also changed, that they are more interested in serving, in really doing very good things for their people, not just taking, filling their pockets. No, something like that is what I really recommend very strongly.
Now, Prof, you mentioned earlier on a response possibly from the AU in as far as thinking ahead on what needs to happen. But let's talk about the immediate response from the region to what is happening in Swaziland. Should SADC respond, and how should SADC respond?
I think SADC should respond. If they respond, I do not want them to interfere in Swaziland, but I would like them to support the collaboration of all the political actors, from the monarchy to all the other actors, to find a way to do what I just say to you. What would be the best governance system that we need to set up for Swaziland? What would be the best leadership, quality leadership that we should do? What would be the best system if we don't want the monarchy? If we want a different system, how do we create it? All right? How do we create a system that still, right, values some of the good traditions, that the values and traditions, the indigenous knowledge, the spiritual, and all other achievements that have been done in Africa that we often don't recognize. Those things, we should not devalue them. The things that are wrong and that create conflicts, those kinds of traditional things that are not positive, we should not engage with them, maybe ignore them. But the good quality leaderships, the quality indigenous knowledge, many things that happen, they should be included. Then a completely new arrangement should be done, and then SADC should be really engaged in facilitating it. The African Union should do it. In fact, this crisis that is happening in Swaziland could be an opportunity, because if we know how to solve it, bring it with an give it an African solution to the problem, it can be a model for other regions and other areas, other conflicts we see in different parts of Africa. So let's try to make it an opportunity, not a challenge. Let's challenge all the challenges and try to come to a great solution that really is very, very helpful from Swaziland. And also, because Swaziland is very, very close to South Africa, South Africa also should play a big role. But I like also South Africa to really I was hoping, genuinely, that South Africa would be a great model for the rest of Africa. So if you fail in leadership, if you fail in governance, if you fail in system building, in institution building, what it will mean is it also impacts the rest of Africa.